Okay, so let's get this party started. So I've been wanting to make this video probably for the last month because I have this really great idea about a D&D game, a D&D setting, a D&D campaign to where it satisfies everything. So what do I mean by that? It's like, well, as a player of D&D, you want to be able to go on a dungeon crawl if you feel like it, or a gritty crime drama if you feel like it, or epic space adventure. And so you need kind of like an excuse or a whole bunch of characters. So I grew up in the 80s. Like I was born in the 70s, but really like my understanding and like what I consider like my childhood is based in the 80s, right? So what I came and here on my screen you can see like this is where I started. I started with the Red Book. It teaches you how to play D&D. It had a player's book, it had a GM's guide, and it was just the two books and a set of dice. So that's what I grew up on, and here is also like some of my favorite art, but this is what I think an orc is. When you say orc, I think of the pig man. It's just really horrific. They just want violence, more Tolkien based. But anyway, so here's the idea I had. So I love Spelljammers, right? It's true D&D high 80s as you can get, right? Because it's pirate ships in space. And there are all these different variants. So like dwarves have flying forges, and like elves have like these leaf ships, and it's just really wonderful. Highly recommend Spelljammer. If you like 80s stuff, highly recommend it. So here's my idea, okay? So let's say this is a life jammer, right? So you got your life jammer, you're floating through the astral sea, and the lich that has turned this int into a flying ship just out of sheer cruelty has captured your heroes. You were once these great heroes of your own realms. You get on board the ship, and it just drains the experience. It drains the memories. And in the bottom of the ship is what's called a Well of Worlds. So a Well of Worlds is an old artifact-like item. It's basically this big round circle, and you use it to plane shift. Like it's this thing where you can step in and just go through dimensions. It's like teleport without error. It's really great. And so I figured if you have this on board, this life jammer, and it crashes, that would give, and the players that are in the life jammer cage crash on board. It'll give you an excuse to pop them to different places. It's like the ultimate MacGuffin. Also, if you want to change characters, this is just a character that was in the soul cage that was draining life essence. Because, you go from like level 18, 20, then you just drain them down to where there's an excuse for them to have like good gear, be in certain places. Because D&D, if you think critically about it, it doesn't work. There has to be a suspension of disbelief. So this is mine. This will give you an excuse to be like, oh, this dwarf was in this the whole time and he escaped and blah blah blah. And he's just been tripping through time and space until like this episode. Because really the only difference between Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, the story you can write here, the story you can write in basic, it's deadly, it should be called deadly Dungeons and Dragons, and one of my favorite mathematical systems, Champions, the hero system, you know, it's you can tell the same stories. You can you can put heroes, villains, antagonists, protagonists. It doesn't matter. This is just math. That's all this is. This is math right here. But the feeling, the setting, that's up to the players. That's up to the referee, the game master. So anyway, my idea was to have these characters that have been drained of their consciousness, drained of their experience, drained of this and that, like to crash on the first world. And the first world was going to be, just a wonderful 80s nod. So it was going to be, you know, H.G. Wells' Time Machine. So the people there are going to be blonde, blue-eyed, just physical perfect specimens, just right. But what's the bad side? Who are the is it mongrels? Oh, I feel like X-Men took their name. Anyway, so what's going to be the bad side? It's the fact that they're all controlled by an aboleth. They all worship this aboleth. So the ship crashes, and you figure out what each player or which person wants what. So there'll be some players that will want money, gold, like physical things, right? Then there'll be like a hero that just wants, or player that just wants power, right? So then there's one that just wants story. Okay. So in this first world, it's kind of like your session zero. You figure out what each person wants. Like, how are they wanting to play their character? What are they wanting to do? And in this kind of like dinosaur perfect world, kind of like this prehistoria, where you figure out like what everyone is and like what their motivations are, and then you can start going on Temple of Elemental Evil. You can go through the Dragonlance modules, like look to certain books to figure out like, okay, if this person that was concerned about life and concerned about this ent, let's say this person's a druid or what have you, what if they did, what if they were put in gothic horror? What if they were put in dark sun? What if they were put in the Dresden Files? What if they were put in this situation or that situation? Or what's one of my books that I really enjoy that this type of character hasn't seen before? What would happen here? Because the rest is just math. I mean, that the only difference between this here, this wonderful math here, and this, that's it. It's like this is a D20 based system and this is a D6 based system. This is just math. But where are your ideas coming from? What do your players want? Because you can't have a story, you can't have an adventure without knowing what the players want. Because if nobody wants to go on a dungeon crawl that has like an orc infestation, or like the world's being taken over by this hellish army by Grummish that's just transforming people into orcs, or cursing people, or this or that, like it doesn't matter. No one wants to play on the game. You don't really have a story. You don't have it's not engaging. Drizzt pops off the page because Salvatore has good writing. But when you play a social game like this, this is math. When I hear D&D, I think the Red Book. When I hear Orc, I think second edition. These guys, because this stood out to me. This right here. But Are you on an H.G. Wells time machine adventure? Are you in a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle adventure? Like, what what is the story? Like, I hear a lot of people. There's this one YouTuber I try to watch, but there's actually several YouTubers that I try to watch or listen to and like try to take in their opinion, and I can't because it just they are just so hung up on the mathematics of it because they prefer a certain system over another that it's just like it gets insulting after a while. But whatever math you like, whatever math you or your players like, whatever that's that's the part that, as a player and as a DM, like I can play this just fine. I can play this math just fine. But it's the feeling, it's the story, it's what are we trying to accomplish. I think dungeon crawls, Tomb of Horrors, just there are so many horrible D&D adventures that I love because I know what I'm getting into. So that was my big hook. You have these characters that have been drained of their experience. They're on this. Oh, Lost in Space, by the way, is this wonderful 60s television show. I just love it. It's just great. It's just great science fiction to me. I guess you could tell by this whole adventure about them being just permanently lost and blinking through adventures, trying to find their way home, trying to rediscover who they were. But anyway, um, yeah, I mean that was my hook. And if let's say they did want to go to Waterdeep and all that, or let's say they wanted to go to Ishtar before the gods threw the mountain, and there was the Blood Sea. Great, explore that. That's a wonderful thing. But really, once you get your main hook and you figure out who your players are, let's say you have someone that just wants to be a scoundrel. A scoundrel going through space, robbing from planet to planet. That's awesome. Talk to them about it. Like now that we're in this digital age and I don't have to worry about ruining like this horrible plastic cover that was on this book. Awesome. Great. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. And now like hopefully my sound recorded. I'll posting this on Twitch now, post it on my YouTube channel. But yeah, like I have been wanting to run this game to where these characters are trying to fix the int. Like I have just so many ideas based around the hook, but really there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can run until I get a few players and I figure out what is Hawkeye's motivation in MASH. It's not hooking up with nurses. It's not martinis. But if you've seen MASH, you know what his motivation is. If you know who Colonel Potter is, you know his motivation. Like these are established people. But how did Hawkeye get to where he is? If you've seen MASH, you know because you've seen the episodes. But Herman Munster, what's his motivation? Where's he coming from? So once you have the hook, once you have it like the place settled, it's really up to the players. And then you put your world around them. And this idea I had of the aboleth in this H.G. Wells time machine type scenario. What would your players do? What would your friends do? And then let's say, Temple of Elemental Evil has this horrible but wonderful trap early on in the moat house to where, not to give everything away, but basically you're descending in a lifeboat and a grell attacks you from above. What would Sherlock Holmes do? I know what Watson would do. Watson is really he's packing. I know Watson. What would Holmes do? Would they get there? So anyway, that's my rant. That's my hook. Love to see the idea of people that kind of out of place. Love the idea of spaceship and these wonderful beholder, um, you know, ships in space. It's just great. Anyway, I will talk at you later, and I am out of here.